right, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to another edition of the Garden Report. And joining us, as he did 7 months ago, give or
Yeah,
take,
about
Dr.
May.
Erek Latzka is here. And we're going to talk about Jayson Tatum, the Achilles. Eric, it's a highly anticipated return, one where we don't know when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen this season. And wanted to ask you some questions about where Jayson's at more or less in the recovery at this point, because we all see him out there shooting and running around and looking like he's ready to play basketball, but obviously still feels like he's a little bit off at the very least from making his return from the injury here. But significant progress are obviously to this point.
Yeah, I mean, watching his recovery, it's been about as fast as we've ever seen anyone recover from an Achilles. It's great to see him out there playing one-on-one and doing these step back threes and loading that leg. That's one of the, I think it was Durant who said that was the hardest part of his game to come back from, the step back three. But we don't know where. I mean, right now, physically, he's not going to be 100% just in terms of his explosiveness. But he may be getting close over the next few months. A lot of where he's at right now will just be the mental game too. It's like he's going to be, I imagine, I was, and a lot of patients are very scared of like when they go for that big explosive step, what's going to happen? Can they rely on it? And getting past that fear is a big part of, you don't want to be thinking about that in the game, right? If you're thinking about anything but what you're supposed to be doing on the court, that's going to affect his play. I'm sure he's better at blocking that stuff out than most people, but we just don't know right now.
Yeah, and so it's a big question I have. It's a big question a lot of people have right now. Like, we see him running up and down the floor, getting shots up, playing one-on-one in the latest video that he put out with a coach. And he looks like a guy who's ready to play basketball just based off the video we're watching. But obviously, based on the timeline of other players who, looked again at Isaiah Jackson and Drew Smith, a couple guys who've come back this season, they were cleared around the 9-month mark. Obviously, going to be interesting to watch DeJounte Murray, who's right around that 9 to 10-month mark himself right now. When's he going to be cleared? When's he going to be back in practice? All that. But 7 months out for Tatum, looks like he's doing a lot. What is the next step? Like, what allows him to run around and shoot and do all those different things, but doesn't allow him to play in a basketball game right now? Like, what is that remaining hurdle he still has to get through to actually return to the Celtics?
Yeah, I think with every sport and not just basketball, there's a different speed when you're in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows you feel good in practice, you play a good full week of practice, full contact, everything. You think your hamstring's good, you think your calf is good, your shoulder's good to pitch, and then you go in the game and you give it, another 5%, you give it your max effort, and then something gets, something tweaks or gets re-injured. And that we see that with so many different types of injuries. And so you never really know until you get to that full game speed. Now, the good thing for Tatum is he's outside the main risk zone, which is really 4 to 6 months when most re-ruptures occur. The risk will continue to get better or decline over the next 5 months. That risk, declines every month out to about a year. And, after a year, the risk kind of just flatlines. There will always be a very, very low, like less than 1 in 100, more like 1 in 1,000 risk of re-rupture once he's over a year out. But, until then, if you wanted to be as conservative as possible, you would wait. Based on the data, you'd wait 12 months. Now he had a speed bridge repair earlier than anyone's ever had that repair before, right? In terms of within 12 to 24 hours, he was in the operating room.
Yeah.
So this is a unique case, and he's a unique player, unique athlete. But I think a lot of people out there, when they hear about the speed bridge repair, they think that's going to allow him to come back earlier. And what we don't know is that is it going to affect his long-term re-rupture rate? And if you look at other studies, when we compare these traditional repair methods versus the anchor-based methods, which is the speed bridge method, they don't seem to change the long-term re-rupture risk. They allow you to load the tendon earlier. They allow you to get back to rehab earlier. And there are good things about that, because then he has less muscle atrophy, less weakness to come back from. But once you hit that 6 to 12 month mark, the re-rupture rates are pretty similar among all these repairs. It's going to be up to him. I think Joe Mazzulla said that the other day.
Yep.
The surgeons at this point are going to tell him what the risk is. And, right now it's probably something like a 1% to 2% chance of a re-rupture. And that will, over the next 5 months, decline to, maybe even 0.2%. If we just look at that 80% of re-ruptures occur before 6 months, 20% after 6 months, and only very few occur after 12 months. I'm sure the doctors, I'm sure he knows all this. His doctors know all this. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it'll probably be his decision.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, he's through the healing phase at this point, 7 months in, and now it's about ramping up activity, getting to a point where you're ready for the speed of the game, where you're ready for contact, physicality, all those different things that need to come your way.
Mostly, yes. There is still some collagen kind of strengthening that's going on in that tendon as he's loading it more and more. But he's through the thick of it in terms of healing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And Dr. Erek Latzka joined us here from Boston Sports and Biologics. Obviously, we talked to him after the tear occurred here. Gave us some of the information about the speed bridge technique there, which I think is an interesting factor here. And we caught up here with CLNS with Kevin Durant, who is obviously the model for a recovery here. And he took 18 months because of circumstances with the season and the bubble and the weird changeover from Golden State to Brooklyn. And he was in a unique situation that allowed him to take as much time as possible. And, he said the surgery has changed so much from where he, had his Achilles completely, opened up to undergo his repair. And he said, he had heard, as you mentioned, that Tatum as well as Damian Lillard underwent a more new age procedure that's less invasive. So, more confirmation from Durant there that, Tatum went with speed bridge technique here potentially. There is a chance, as you said, that this could allow him to come back earlier than really anyone we've seen here, but it doesn't guarantee it.
Right. I mean, he could probably, if he wanted to, I imagine, tell a coach like he's ready to go and give it a shot anywhere, over the next 5 months. But he's got he's only 27? How old is he?
27. Yep.
Yeah. He's got a lot of years left. And you want to, and probably the owners and everybody are thinking long term. Now, I don't know if anybody thought the Celtics were going to be playing as well as they are without him. So they look like they're going to be a playoff team, and that might, change how he's weighing the benefits and risks of this situation if they are in that position. Yeah.
He and the team have said 100%. That's when he'll be back. When he's 100%, that's when he's going to play again. What does that mean in your view?
I think that means, he will be, they're measuring his strength in that tendon. They're having him jump on force plates where they can measure the peak force of load going through his foot and leg as he's jumping and how long he's in the air, essentially off of that leg versus the other leg. And I'm sure they know what that was before. They test these players. They're in, they have all of the technology to track these things. So they're going to wait until that leg is as good as his other leg from a physical standpoint. And then even when it is, I think the other thing to be 100% is the mental aspect and, forgetting about the Achilles. And when you can't really remember which leg or which ankle, had the surgery, and you're not thinking about it when you're playing, that's the other probably 100%. And that'll be the longest. And most people, that's around a year when you start to kind of forget and move past it and not think about it.
Yeah, and so when we look at the timeline ahead here, he'll hit 8 months into January, 9 months into February, which is an interesting time. Again, a lot of players cleared around then for 5-on-5 contact, everything else you need to start ramping up at the highest level. That would be around the All-Star break, which would be good timing. You get
Yeah.
into practices around then, and you have some opportunity with team and live action and all that to get ready for games. So think February is an interesting spot where he could potentially at least reach that full ramp up stage of like going through practices, going through all the ways to re-enter the lineup at that point. And then March, obviously the last full month, that would be 10 months. And then April, the end of the regular season, you get to 11 months. The last game of the regular season is actually directly on the 11th month mark of him tearing the Achilles. So if you said it's been in the past in a lot of situations, you miss 12 months or you're not fully yourself until the 12-month mark, that could be where you do end up missing this season for him, if you're him, if the playoffs come and Celtics either aren't there or get eliminated round one or whatever that might be. The question I've had, and I don't know if you have a good answer for this. Obviously, this is his decision and the team's decision. If that time does come, the 100% mark where he's ready to go, and it's a playoff situation. So, it's tough to ease in. It's full go. The intensity of those games, the minutes of those games are on another level. Do you return for that environment? Do you just say, all right, training camp, preseason's a better way to ease into things than a playoff series?
Yeah,
Or once you're ready to go, are you just ready to go and you're getting into a playoff series?
going for that's really going 0 to 100, right? If his first games back are in the playoffs, I think no matter what they do, whether it's he makes it back in the playoffs or regular season, this is where they're going to have to do a little load management, which is more common these days. They can't go. You got to ramp him up slowly, even in the games, right? You can't go back to 48 minutes right away. And so just ramping up his time on the court, I think, will be important, and seeing how he responds and seeing, how much time he might not, play every game. He'll play a game here and then maybe take a couple off and see how he recovers. That'll be a decision that him, the doctors, Missoula all kind of make together. But I would expect some sort of load management and slow ramp up when he comes back.
Yeah, and we discussed this because obviously if he doesn't come back this season, you'll be talking about 15 months or so, give or take 16 maybe, until he's in game action again, would have a full off season to continue working out, training camp to reintegrate. Is that necessarily extra beneficial compared to missing the year, getting to 100%, returning for a game or two at the end
Yeah.
of the season here? Because obviously everyone looks at Durant, who missed the 18 months, and how amazing he looked. I mean, he was averaging 30 points a game, playing
Right.
every game when he started right away, and there was no real
He looked like the
lag,
same
rust,
player.
whatever. Yeah, he looked like the same player. And obviously, as you mentioned, there's a chance if Tatum comes back around the year mark here that there will be a minutes limit. There will be a ramp up period where he's trying to get back to that full form. So, would there be a benefit to missing this season entirely and just starting fresh in the fall?
I mean, I think if you are just looking at this from a long-term benefit, there probably is some benefit to just coming back next season, really getting as far away from that re-rupture risk as possible. When we look at other players who came back earlier, were they the same player on the court? Everybody could tell. Well, Kobe was much older, but not most players are not the same after Achilles ruptures. J.K. Dobbins has looked pretty good in the NFL, but even him not the same. Durant probably had the least drop off of any player that we've seen, and he took a longer recovery. So yeah, I think if the Celtics aren't in a realistic position to go far in the playoffs, it would be probably more beneficial to just take more time.
For sure. And he wants to be out there. I think everyone wants to see him this year, but it's going to be an interesting decision when the time comes. him, the team, and trying to figure out what's going to be in their best long-term benefit, what's going to be the benefit for this season. Let's say he does come back February, March on the earlier end of things here. What will that look like? Is it going to be a minutes limit for an extended period of time, you would think? How many games, how many weeks do you think it'll take for him to start resembling, from a minute standpoint as well as a productivity standpoint, the old Tatum?
Yeah, I think that would be if he comes back this season. I hope he comes back in February and gets a month of regular season play to kind of ramp up, rather than jumping back into the playoffs. I think that just sounds riskier to me. So hopefully, say he comes back in February and he has a month of just come playing a few minutes, then a quarter, then a half, taking more time off in between games. I would just hope then that by the playoffs, that's when he looks like himself. I don't think he needs to push it to try to be 100% during the regular season.
Yeah, and you've seen these videos, I'm sure. You see him working out. You see the shooting, running, as we've talked about, that he's doing right now. Like, what does stand out to you when you watch him about where he's at potentially right now? Can you read into that at all? Like, is there anything to watch for when he's running and doing some things that we're able to see on camera, on practice, that you can glean
Yeah.
from?
So I think running forward is not going to be the thing that's hard for him. Jumping even may not be the hard thing.
A lot of these guys are dunking at like 6
Yeah.
months.
The hard thing, I mean, what's honestly harder than jumping up and dunking is coming down from that rim and landing on the foot.
Yeah.
Or, like as Durant said, jumping or stepping back for a three. It's that backwards motion where the tendon is being stretched. We call that an eccentric load. And that's how he tore it, just stepping back. But we saw him step back and tear. Now just imagine, coming down from the rim and landing in a backwards position, or playing defense. A lot of Achilles injuries happen when people are running backwards and trying to guard a defender, especially in the NFL. We've seen cornerbacks do that as they're backpedaling. So that, I think, probably in his head is one of the hardest things for him, not the top speed sprinting or jumping.
Yeah, and how do you simulate those things? Because, again, we don't see him a ton from our view here, but you don't see him doing a lot of those things. It is the, back and forth motions, forward running, shooting, even a dunk, here and there. But you don't see a lot of the motions that you described. Like, how do you start to put those into workouts and activity?
I'm sure the trainers are doing plenty of that with him and putting him through that. And his physical therapists, they may not be doing it on the court, but they're doing a lot of those, I'm sure. Forward jumps, backward jumps, on a single leg, over a ladder, but and the things you can't control, are when you're in a position where other players are landing around you, or there's more than just your body weight on you because someone goes up for a block and you come down with more force than you expect. That's what, like, Aaron Rodgers, had another person on his back when he tore his. So it's hard to simulate those characteristics where there's going to be more force than you can even put through it just on your own. But I'm sure they're working on that in the training room.
Yeah, and there's a contact component at a certain point too you have to get to, I'd imagine, where, you're finishing through contact, you're doing all the physical basketball things that you need to do when it comes to colliding with other players, and the contact things, someone landing around you, those sort of things that I'd have to imagine mostly come once you get back in the practice environment or scrimmage environment at this point. And it doesn't seem like he's quite there yet, unless he is and we're just not seeing it.
Yeah, and you can simulate those things in physical therapy and training using like jumping with weighted vests, running against pulley systems and bungee cords and things like that.
Yeah, and we do see that. Yeah.
So that's their way of trying to simulate added contact and force than he'll even experience out on the court.
So, I mean, it's the question I receive almost every day, and I'm sure you can't answer it fully, but what does your gut tell you? Just as a fan, as someone who knows a lot about this stuff. Do you think we'll see him this season?
I think we will, just based on how quick he has been recovering, and I'm sure the confidence he has in himself and the repair that he got so early. That's what I'm gathering based on watching his recovery. As a fan, though, I kind of don't want him to come back yet. I am in this for the long term, and I want another decade of Tatum. So I would not be upset if he doesn't.
Why do you say that? Because you obviously know the medical side of that. Like as a fan and like the long term interest here, like you do think it is that potentially risky coming back this early?
Well, I just think the worst case scenario would be a rupture, a
Hmm.
re-rupture, and until he gets to 12 months, that risk is going to keep getting less. And then the other thing is that the other risk is what we call tendon elongation. So the problem with an Achilles repair is that you want the Achilles to be very tight and explosive, and if you lose that tension on it, it can be you won't get that explosiveness back. You can't make a tendon more tight. You can make it looser. So he's most likely outside of that zone where it could elongate. But I don't know. It's just one season, and he's so young. He's younger than most of the people who've got it before. So I think there's almost more benefit for him to wait than there would be, say, for Durant to wait or Kobe to wait. Their risk benefit ratios, they have only a few years, especially in Kobe's case, a few years left, right? So they want to get back. If you're looking at another 10 years of playing, missing a few months more, as a fan, I just don't want the worst possible outcome for him.
Yeah, and I'm sure fans are split on it. We'll see what they say in the chat here and in the comments below about how they're feeling about him potentially coming back now at this point. But I think as you watch this team, and I'm sure you've watched a decent amount this year, the thing they're missing is Tatum, like a guy playing at the 4 consistent minutes, point of attack, another guy to create, another shooter, like everything that they're missing right now, he can
Yeah.
provide. And that is where you start dreaming, especially with how competitive they've been so far without him,
Mhm.
about winning the East, going further than anyone imagined them going potentially this season. And obviously, there's a bigger picture beyond this year for this group. But if he comes back and is close to himself, I feel like East Finals at the very least is in play for this group. Like the question is, I guess, how limited is he going to be? Like how much of a less percentage of Tatum is he going to be if he does return this year? Because obviously, if he hits the ground running and is that same 30-point per game guy, right upon return or not soon after, you could call this team potentially the favorite in the East if that's what they're getting back. But it's so unclear what he's going to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe he plays and then they pull back his minutes if he's not the same yet. They give him a chance. See how the team responds to having him out there, and if it's not the same yet, they can always slow down and wait till
Yeah.
next season.
How long would you imagine he's limited from a minutes perspective once he does get back?
A month, probably. I think they
Yeah.
can ramp him up in a month.
So that's where February, March, like the timing that's going to be important. And you know, it is crazy. I mean, we're here in mid-December. Like a month from now, is there that talk of, all right, he could be in practice in a couple of weeks from now? Is he even in practice next month? Then all of a sudden it's go time, and you're talking like February, like a very early return here. So we're almost there, and it was good to have this conversation. He's Dr. Erek Latzka, always providing a lot of good information on this and more. You can find him over on Twitter at Erek Latzka MD. Of course, coming to us from Boston Sports and Biologics. Anything else you want to shout out? Anything we didn't discuss here or point out that you think we should say before we sign off here?
No, I think we touched on all the hot topics. I have seen Tatum in some new commercials for I think a medication that he took after in his recovery. It's like
Yeah.
non-opiate, non-NSAID, so like something you can take right after surgery. So he's getting all the newest, he's gotten all of the newest treatment options out there.
Yeah, and he certainly went on a press tour going into the season, stressing that he's not out for the year. He's going to give a shot at coming back, all this stuff. So his intention, obviously, from the beginning has been, I'm going to try to play this year. I'm going to try to have as quick of a return as
Yeah.
any of us have ever seen from this injury, which is pretty cool. I'm sure it's motivated this team. I just wrote on CLNSmedia.com how he's been around and just helpful to the team to begin this season. But I do remember from one of those interviews you mentioned there, his doctor, Martin O'Malley, mentioning that like his calf strength following this surgery has been at a level that he hadn't really seen before. What's the significance of that?
Well, I think that goes back to how quickly he got the repair, because so much of the strength loss occurs when there's no attachment from the calf to the foot, and that muscle is completely relaxed or shortened. And for how long that is, the muscle's atrophying, losing its bulk, losing its muscle fibers at a rapid rate. And they were able to limit that to a period of 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so while he wasn't necessarily strengthening the muscle during that first, week or two after the surgery, I think they definitely limited a lot of the muscle loss by, getting tension back on that tendon and muscle immediately.
All right. Again, he's Dr. Erek Latzka. Thanks for joining us here today, and
Thanks,
looking
Bobby.
forward to talking to you once Tatum's back on the floor.
Yeah, I can't wait.
This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the holiday season, the best time of year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there's one place where it feels good to be right. That's PrizePicks. So many ways to play right now over on PrizePicks, and a lot of our full season fantasy leagues are coming to an end. If you missed the playoffs, if you're out of the action, great way to play with this football season continuing here. It's over on PrizePicks, where you can put together a new team each week. You can use multiple sports in the same lineup too. So with basketball back, you can put Steph Curry and Patrick Mahomes in the same lineup and root for both. There's a lot of awesome ways to play over there. New feature is the early payout. So if your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. And again, if your team's cooked, PrizePicks, you don't have to wait till next year's draft to play fantasy football every week. If you want flexibility, choose Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. If you want the biggest payouts, go for Power Play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. I love how straightforward it is. You don't have to spend a lot of time trying to calculate your payouts. They make it easy with their payout multipliers, whether it's a simple 3 times or a big 2,000 times. PrizePicks makes it easy to understand how much I can win, and it's simple to play. Pick more or less than at least 2 player stats. And if you get your picks right, you can cash in. Get in on the action. PrizePicks now available in 45 states. They offer stacks, which means you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Let's say you want to go more on Steph Curry's points, threes, assists. Now you can pick them all in the same lineup, only on PrizePicks. Join millions of users and sign up for America's #1 fantasy sports app. Download PrizePicks today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, thanks to Dr. Erek Latzka. As we continue the Garden Report here, I want to shout out my piece that we put out on clnsmedia.com yesterday as we record this. And that was about Tatum's impact off the court so far this season. And I got a chance to talk to pretty much every player on the Celtics about this. There were a few interesting key anecdotes that I want to hit on here that contribute to his leadership, his borderline coaching role to start this season. Now, if you throw it back to the summer, Tatum was in training camp, or Tatum was in the off-season facility workouts, where some players will come in who are joining the team for the first time. Uh, Rookies obviously are going to come to the Auerbach Center and get ready for summer league. And those who want to come back and get some workouts in throughout the summer, Peyton Pritchard's in the area, obviously doing his Cape Cod stuff, and others return early, get in some extra work. it's not normal for Tatum to be there. Normally, he'd be playing international basketball. He'd be playing uh, some sort of off-season pickup game somewhere around the country, or just relaxing and on vacation, or doing some kind of promotional run. He's not necessarily going to be hanging around Boston in July. Same goes for Jaylen Brown, who underwent surgery on his partially torn meniscus over the summer and needed to be in Boston for rehab. So when Hugo Gonzalez and all the rookies arrived, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown there to greet them, there to answer their questions, just be around as they start their NBA careers. Same goes for a guy like Luka Garza, who arrived to Tatum at the facility when he first started working out with the team after signing with them in July. Uh, Chance to ask about screening, the offense, ways that he can help set them up. Luka Garza did all of that and more once he got there over the summer, and it allowed him to hit the ground running with a backup center role to start this year. So I talked to him in Washington, D.C., where Garza said there was a screening situation early in the season, and Tatum's obviously been on the bench in film sessions, on road trips, which I'm not even sure if the team totally expected from him at the start of this year. Maybe the team did, but I'm sure players were uh, pleasantly surprised by the fact that he was around. So in an early home game, Garza went into a screening set, probably should have slipped out or gotten into the pocket quicker, he told me, because the defense was in a more aggressive coverage. If it was either switch or blitz or something like that, Tatum definitely made the point of getting into the pocket, because that's obviously something he deals with a lot, is getting blitzed. He's definitely someone I've wanted to learn from, Tatum said, but I think on the court, he's been more vocal, just coming up to guys, giving tips or pointers on something small he sees. Might be small for him to see it, but it's big for us to hear it. It's big. So all that lends itself to this being a pleasant surprise for some of the new cast of players on this team who didn't know Tatum coming in, haven't played with him in recent years. But even the guys who have been around have been benefited from, and again, pleasantly surprised by the fact that Tatum's been around the team so much at the start of the year. Here was Jaylen Brown talking about Tatum's presence earlier this season when I asked him.
He's been super active. He's been around. He's been like, you know what I mean? It's been dope to see. Like, he's been engaged. He's been on majority of every flight. He's been in almost every film session. So that level of dedication, you can tell he's eager to get back. Like, you know, a lot of guys that know they got an extended amount of time, they're gonna be separate themselves mentally for a little bit or whatever. He's been there, like he's been like a extra coach almost in a sense. So it's been kind of cool to see.
So you hear there, Brown said based on his experience, what guys usually do at this point in their recovery, they're not around. They're in the training room. They're separate from the team. They're not traveling. That is the common approach to coming back from, especially a long-term injury like this. Tatum taking the opposite approach here. He's missed a game here or there for Halloween and skipped a road trip one off at one point. So he hasn't been at every game. He's been at most games. And what are you seeing? Him along the sideline, talking, giving a quick word to a guy. Usually he's in Derek White's ear. And I thought that was encouraging as White went through his struggles at the start of the season to have Tatum there. As White told me, annoying him, probably making him laugh, just being a friend, being a teammate, all the different things that you can do to support someone when they're struggling. And White said it did help to have someone believing in him as he shot poorly to start this year, and his season has turned around in the time since. But I would say the biggest benefit Tatum's given this team in terms of his coaching of a teammate was with Jordan Walsh. And Xavier Tillman tipped me off to this first at a community event that the Celtics did, and mentioned that Tatum's been trying to get certain players going on the roster here. And this is how Tillman described the way he's been in Jordan Walsh's ear as he started his season.
Yeah, his thing is trying to create more killers out there in terms of like mentality. Like I hear him talking to Jordan a lot about just like being a killer every chance that he gets on the court instead of like just playing a certain role. And he just knows winning basketball, knows what it takes. So he gives different gems like that throughout the game and throughout. We haven't had much practices, but throughout the games and throughout our travel and stuff like that in between to like help guys, on our journey to try to win as many games as possible.
So I circled back with Walsh. We obviously had a full interview with him here on the Garden Report. I was able to ask him about what Tillman said right there, the way Tatum's helped him get more aggressive. And if you hadn't followed the reporting, Jaylen Brown obviously was the one who spoke to Walsh on the plane and sat next to him on their road trips and came up with the idea of, all right, you should be in the rotation guarding the opposing best players. There's a role for you here defensively that can help this team. And Jordan mentioned that Jaylen was going to take that to Joe Mazzulla. Jordan started playing regularly, entered the starting lineup, and they're now 10-3 with him in that role. But Tatum, once Walsh did start playing, noticed something that he pointed out to the 21-year-old when they were talking after one of the games. And it obviously had an impact, I think, that you can see in the way Walsh has played. Here's what he had to say to me on this. He said he's been in your ear a lot, telling you to be a killer, trying to fire you up and that sort of stuff. Like, what kind of things has he been telling you from the bench, from the sideline while he's been out and traveling with the team?
I mean, a lot of it is just like in the moment stuff. Like take your shots, look to be aggressive. He feels like some of the times I'm not even looking at the rim to try to go and attack. I'm just looking for the next pass. So he's been in my ear to tell me to be aggressive, look at the rim, take the shots, take the opportunity, because you could take it and then you could succeed in it, and then now it becomes something that you can do regularly. And so just stuff like that.
So there you have it. I think Walsh has benefited immensely from Tatum's presence this year. You see Derek White getting more confident as the season moves forward from his slow start. You even see Jaylen and Jayson talking what they see on the floor. Peyton Pritchard told me that he'll go to Tatum and see what he sees on the floor to try to navigate the game. Maybe there's something they miss that Tatum's able to point out. I know Hugo Gonzalez, Ron Harper Jr. both mentioned that there's a level and a position he's in to see the game from the bench that none of them can match necessarily here, along with the fact that he just is who he is as a player, has the experience, and has seen all the different defenses and coverages and screening situations that can come up through the course of the game. And as you heard Jaylen say earlier, he's almost been like an extra coach in a way this season. So check that out over on CLNSmedia.com. A lot of great quotes in there. Timeline situation right now, of course. The DeJounte Murray return, I think, is something to watch for. He's going to reach the 10-11 month mark shortly here. Is he back in practice? Is he back on the floor shortly over the next month or two here? The Pelicans' 4-22 record doesn't point toward him rushing back. So I think if he does have to miss some time, and I've even heard this in my trip down to New Orleans earlier this season, that it's possible Murray slow plays his return, given the state of that team and given the outlook of his career here. Who knows where he's going to be going forward, given the state of that franchise. So I don't think you're going to see a rapid return from Murray the way you might with Tatum. And again, no updates, no timeline from the Celtics at this point, but we're going to start to see more and more of him. We're going to hear, I'm sure, some reporting about when he could get back into practices, when he could get back into activity here over the next month or two. I think that's going to be a key time. January, February, what's he doing? Where is he at? Where does his rehab continue to go here? But it seems like he's in a great position to return this season. And as we talked about with Dr. Erek Latzka and on the postgame show a couple times now, I do expect Tatum to be back this season, barring any setbacks. I think it's almost certain that he's going to play some amount of basketball this season. So that's been the Garden Report. Subscribe, CLNS Media, Celtics All Access, as well as the CLNS Press Room, the channel for all the press conferences as the season continues. On Monday against the Pistons, Celtics coming out of the NBA Cup playoff here with a tough stretch. Detroit, Miami, and another game against Toronto to come next week. So we'll have coverage of all of that here on the channel, as well as Patriots coverage with their stretch run getting started over the last 3 games. Subscribe over there. as well as Bruins coverage over on Bruins Rinkside. I'm Bobby Manning. This has been the Garden Report here on CLNS Media.